So commissions, looking at what are some different like real life ways that we apply percent sort of things. First one is to be commissions, so people that do things like car salesmen. Sometimes we did this for like shoe sales when I sold shoes for a little bit. But basically if you get money with a commission, your total pay, a lot of them they have like a certain amount of base pay, so you get a certain amount of money as a real estate agent, we'll say. Whether you sell any houses or not, that's your base pay. And then plus the commission, which is going to be that commission thing is a certain percent of the sales. So if you sell a $100,000 house, you get a certain percentage of $100,000. If you sell a $250,000 house, you get a percentage of $250,000. That's the extra. So I have Sheila. If Sheila makes $36,000 a year, plus a 1.5% commission on her sales, how much money does she make when she sells $875,000 in a year? So I don't know if we're talking houses, cars, school buses, but anyway, so I'm going to shorten it a little bit, and I'm just going to say the total equals the base plus the commission. Maybe do commission that way. And for these here, the base pay is, anyone?
$36,000.
Perfect. So $36,000. That's the amount of money she makes without selling anything. Now this commission we set up above is a certain percentage of the sales. So we have our sales is right here, and the percentage is.
1.5.
So we need to right here say, well, what's 1.5% of 875,000? So we could write that in as. Go back to yesterday.
Proportion.
You could do a proportion inside this is going to be ugly. So I would just say 1.5%. How do we write 1.5%? Well, yep.
0.015.
I don't know. We might maybe said new. Original equals part. Maybe we said whole and new. I don't remember exactly how we phrased it yesterday. But if we use this equation here, it's going to be a little easier. And basically, if we're trying to figure out what's the part, what's her commission, because that's what's going to go right there, that equals the percent, which a lot of you were just saying 1.5% we'd write as 0.015, right? So I'm just going to write it right in here, 0.015 times that total amount of money, which is the original amount she makes, is the $875,000. So you could do a calculation here on the side, get your answer, and then go put it in. I'm just going to do it all at one time. So it looks a little sloppy there. But I could take this and punch all that into my calculator, and it'll give me the answer in one shot. So if I do that, I have 36,000 plus 0.015 times 875,000. Hit enter. We get that Sheila makes $49,125. At least that year. If for next year she sells more, then she'd make more money. If she sold less, then she'd make less money. But does that work for you guys?
Yeah.
I thought she made $875,000.
No, that'd be sweet. No, that'd be the total amount of cars she sold, value of all the cars, or value of the houses, or something like that. We okay on commission stuff? The next one is simple interest. Simple interest isn't really used a ton. So if you have money in the bank and you're getting interest on it, it's going to be called compound interest. A lot of books, they do this just because the math is easier and you'll get the compound interest formula when you take Algebra 2. But for simple interest, the actual amount of interest is going to be I, and that equals a capital P times a lowercase r times a lowercase t. Yeah, so we did this last year. So the P stands for the principal. In most places they spell it P-L-E. Sometimes you see the P-A-L. But principal is the money that's invested. So it's basically equals the money invested. Or if this is, you borrowed money from a loan shark to gamble on, I don't remember what horse race was Sunday. It'd be the amount of money that you owe, the amount of money that you borrowed. R is going to be the interest rate. And interest rate, it's going to be a percent. And I'm going to put in here in parentheses as a decimal. If you put in there like 4%, if you actually put in a 4 for R instead of 0.04, you're going to get this huge amount of interest. You need to remember to change it to 0.04 if it's 4%. Or if it's 10%, it would be 0.1 for 10%. You always move that decimal point 2 places first. Now, usually interest rates are going to be so much a year. If it's so much a year, then T has to be the time in years. I'm just going to write time in years because that's usually the way it is. But if you get a trick question that says, the loan shark, Billy Bob L, charges this percent a week, then T has to be the number of weeks. So if it was like 1 year, you'd have to put in 52 weeks in a year? 52?
52, yep.
Okay, 52 weeks in a year. All right, so we have L. L gets a car loan for $12,500. He wants to buy my super sweet rusty Honda Civic. And he doesn't know it's worth way less than that. Okay, 3 years, 5% interest. How much does he pay in interest? So I'm going to be a good boy and write down my equation. I equals P times R times T. I'm even going to space it out a little bit so I can get the numbers underneath there. So principal, under P we write, nice, 12,500. Underneath the R we write, nice, 0.05. Can't just do the 5 because I give you some ginormous number. And I'm assuming it's 5% interest a year, so then T would be 3. And if I punch all that in my calculator, I get $1,875. So the total interest that accrues or that you have to pay after 3 years would be $1,875. If the question were to say, how much does the car actually cost Bob, L, exactly, then you'd have to take the amount of the loan, what he had to pay, the principal, plus the interest that's added on. So you'd get, that'd be like $14,375 total. Fair? So be a little careful. I think there might be 1 or 2 like that in the homework. Any other questions on Roman numeral 2 or any questions? Last bit. Tips and tax estimates. They're trying to get you to be able to do this in your head. So when you're on a date, you can look all sweet and leave a tip and not have to whip out your calculator to figure out how much tip to leave. And what's that? Or just leave a bunch and figure, yeah, good enough. Or don't leave a bunch and just be really fast. But okay, so 15% is normal. If you're going to find 15%, 10% is easy, right? If you want 10% of a number, you move the decimal point. Oops. 1 place. And then add half of that again. So in other words, 10%, you take the decimal point, move it 1 place. So am I moving my decimal point right there, 1 place to the left, 1 place to the right?
1 place to the right.
Yep. So it's going to be about $2.38. It says approximately. Do we want to round that to a nicer number to work with?
$2. $3 if it's a tip.
$2.45.
You could say 250, could say 240.
$2.25.
I'm going to go 240. Because this here we now know is about 10%, right? Supposed to be my approximately equals to. So if we want to get 5%, what's 5% going to be? $1.20. So if we want to get about 15%, do you agree we could take those two and add them together? Gives me about 15. So if we add these two together, we get $3.60. And somebody had said earlier, well, you could do 250. If you wanted to do 250, it would just be 250 and $1.25. So then you end up with 375. Ooh, really bad 3. But so, when you get ones like this that say approximately, there's, I'm going to look at your answer and be like, was that reasonable? Rounding to 240 to 250, those are pretty reasonable. I don't think I'd go all the way up to $3 or all the way down to $2. Something like that. But ready for tax? Michigan, we have 6% sales tax. So, yeah, different states do different amounts. I want to say it's like 7.5% or something like that for Indiana or Illinois. But
What's the lowest?
it used to be, I'm old. I remember when it was 4% sales tax in Michigan. And it was way cooler back then, maybe. Okay, so find 1%. To find 1% of the total, you move the decimal point 2 places. So that would give us 1%, and then you could multiply by 6. So these are like doing it in your head without a calculator, but if I have $23.80, if I want to figure out what 1% is, I take and go 2 jumps. So 0.238 is going to be 1%. That's kind of a pain to work with. That's close to 0.24, I guess, kind of the same as before, 0.24. So I'm going to say 1%. Ooh, back up. So 1% is approximately 0.24. Well, if we want 6%, we need to take and multiply that by 6. That's still not a nice number. What's a number that's real easy to multiply by 6? If you think of...
0.25.
Yeah, 0.25. I'm going to see if I can erase just that 4. Whenever I have like 0.25s, I just think of quarters. 6 quarters is how much money? Yeah, $1.50. So I'd probably do this here. You know, if for these approximately or estimate, if you're doing something like 0.24 times 6, if you're doing a math problem like this, then you probably didn't round it enough. Round it to a nice number so you can easily just kind of do it in your head. Is that fair? And if you wanted to do that, you could. You would have came up with, it should have been like 6 cents less, so $1.44. But you can just kind of do it in your head. So, any questions? So we hit all the learning targets. I think we did. We can estimate. We just did those. Simple interest, commissions. So we're good.